The champagne flute felt like a weapon in my hand as I watched my wife Sienna hold court across the hotel ballroom, her laugh cutting through the ambient chatter like broken glass. She was in her element here. Designer dress, perfect makeup, surrounded by admirers who hung on her every word like she was dispensing legal wisdom instead of gossip. I should have stayed home. "Eli, you look like you'd rather be anywhere else," said Margot, sliding up beside me at the bar. She was one of the few people here who still talked to me like I was human instead of just Sienna's blue-collar accessory. "Perceptive as always," I muttered, taking another sip of overpriced bourbon. "Just counting the minutes until I can escape back to reality." Margot's expression darkened. "Speaking of reality, there's something you should—" "Ladies and gentlemen!" Sienna's voice boomed across the room as she tapped her glass with a fork. The crowd quieted, all eyes turning toward her like she was about to announce the cure for cancer. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's so wonderful to see all our friends together." She paused, scanning the room until her eyes found mine. That smile, the one that used to make my heart race, now made my stomach turn. "You know, marriage is like anything else in life. Sometimes you need to throw out the trash and start fresh." The crowd chuckled politely. "I mean, look at my poor husband over there, bless his heart, working with his hands all day, coming home covered in grease. I keep telling him I need a new marriage because this one's clearly trash." The laughter was louder this time. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, waiting for my reaction. Some looked amused, others uncomfortable. Brent Calloway, Sienna's law partner, was practically glowing with satisfaction as he stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. I set down my glass and walked through the crowd. The conversations died as I approached, the silence spreading like ripples in a pond. Sienna's confident smile faltered slightly as I reached into my jacket pocket. "You know what, honey?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm glad we finally agree on something." I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to her. Her manicured fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, her face going pale as she read the first page. "Divorce papers," I announced to the room. "Already signed on my end. All you need to do is add your signature, and you'll be free to start fresh. No more trash to worry about." The silence was deafening. Sienna's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Brent's hand dropped from her back as if he'd been burned. The crowd stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to lips, unsure whether this was part of some elaborate joke. "Eli, what are you—" "This isn't funny," Sienna finally managed, her voice cracking. "You're absolutely right. It's not funny at all." I looked around the room at all the faces staring back at me, colleagues from her law firm, neighbors, people I'd considered friends. But it is honest, and honesty seems to be in short supply around here. I turned and walked toward the exit, my footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, the shocked murmurs of a crowd that had just witnessed something they'd be talking about for months. As I reached the door, I heard Sienna's voice, shrill and desperate. "Eli, wait! Come back here! We need to talk about this!" But I was already gone, stepping out into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone was already buzzing with texts and missed calls, but I ignored them all. There would be plenty of time for conversations later. What I didn't know was that someone in the crowd had been recording the whole thing. By the time I got home, the video was already making its way through social media, shared and reshared by people who couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. I changed the locks that night. The next morning, I was elbow deep in the engine of a 2018 Honda Accord when Vic, my shop assistant, came running over with his phone in his hand. "Boss, you gotta see this," he said, barely containing his excitement. "You're famous, man. This thing's got like 50,000 views already." I wiped my hands on a rag and took his phone. There I was, clear as day, handing Sienna those divorce papers while she stood there looking like she'd been slapped. The comments were brutal and mostly in my favor. Savage move, dude. About time someone put that stuck-up lawyer in her place. Plot twist of the century right there. Did you see her face? Priceless. Vic was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Dude, you're like a folk hero or something. Half the town's been waiting for someone to take Sienna down a peg. My phone rang. Sienna's name flashed on the screen for the 20th time since last night. I declined the call and went back to work. Around noon, Mrs. Firth shuffled over from next door. She was 83 years old and spent most of her time on her front porch, watching the neighborhood like a hawk. Nothing happened on our street without her knowledge. "Eli, dear," she said, settling into the lawn chair I kept by the garage for her visits. "I saw your wife come home this morning. She looked upset." I imagine she did. Mrs. Firth leaned forward conspiratorially. "She had a man with her. Tall fellow, fancy car. They were arguing on the front porch before she realized the locks were changed." Brent. "Of course. Mrs. Firth, you've lived on this street longer than anyone. Have you noticed visitors when I'm at work?" The old woman's eyes lit up. She loved being useful. "Oh, honey, where do I start? That lawyer friend of hers, Brent, I think. He comes by Tuesdays and Thursdays, regular as clockwork. Sometimes Saturdays, too. Never parks out front, always around the corner. Sneaky-like." My hands tightened on the wrench I was holding. "How long has this been going on?" "Oh, months now, maybe longer. And he's not the only one either. There was that young man from her office, the one with the red sports car. And sometimes women, too, for those book club meetings that never seemed to involve any books." The picture was becoming clearer, and I didn't like what I was seeing. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Bar, a dive near the marina where Margot worked as a bartender. The place was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of regulars who minded their own business. Perfect for a conversation I didn't want overheard. Margot was wiping down glasses when I walked in. She took one look at my face and poured me a double bourbon without being asked. "So," she said, leaning against the bar, "I'm guessing you want to hear what I was trying to tell you last night." "Hit me." She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "Eli, your wife has been screwing half the law firm. Brent's just the latest flavor of the month. She brags about it, says you're too stupid to notice and too useful to divorce because you keep the house nice and don't ask questions about her late nights." The bourbon burned going down, but not as much as the truth. "There's more," Margot continued. "She's been telling people you're abusive. Nothing dramatic, just little comments here and there. Oh, Eli gets so angry when dinner isn't ready. He has such a temper when he's been drinking." Setting up a narrative, in case she ever needs it. I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? You were so in love with her, Eli. We all tried to warn you when you first started dating, but you wouldn't listen. She had you completely fooled. I finished my drink and stood up. "Not anymore." "What are you going to do?" I smiled, and Margot actually took a step back. "I'm going to show her what happens when you underestimate someone. But first I need to do some research." The next day, while Sienna was at work trying to salvage her reputation, I went home to collect some things. She'd been careless, sloppy even. Her laptop was still logged into her email. Her phone, which she'd left behind in her panic, was full of text messages and photos that painted a very clear picture of her extracurricular activities. I didn't hack anything. I didn't need to. She'd left it all right there in the open, like she was daring me to find it. The texts with Brent were particularly illuminating. "Can't wait to get rid of the grease monkey. Just need to time it right for maximum alimony. He's so pathetic. Thinks I'm working late when I'm here with you. Maybe I should push him to hit me. Would make the divorce easier." I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a secure folder, and started planning. Word travels fast in a small city, especially when it involves a prominent lawyer being publicly humiliated by her blue-collar husband. By the end of the week, everyone in town had seen the video or heard about it secondhand. Sienna tried to control the narrative, of course. She called an emergency meeting with her inner circle: Lila, her best friend and social media influencer wannabe; Zach, who used to be my friend before he got seduced by Sienna's crowd; and a few others from the law firm. I know this because Zach, feeling guilty about how things had played out, called to give me a heads up. "She's planning something, Eli," he said, his voice tense. "She's telling everyone you've been abusive, that the divorce papers were just you trying to control her. She's got Lila documenting everything for social media, building a case for public sympathy." "Let her," I said. "I've got documentation too." That weekend, Brent made his first mistake. He came to my garage, strutting in like he owned the place, wearing a $1,000 suit and an attitude that begged to be knocked down. "We need to talk," he announced, ignoring Vic and the other customers. I didn't look up from the transmission I was rebuilding. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. You embarrassed Sienna at that party, and now you're going to fix it. You're going to withdraw those divorce papers and apologize publicly, or things are going to get very unpleasant for you." Now I looked up. Brent was trying to loom over me, but it's hard to be intimidating when you're wearing Italian leather shoes in a garage full of oil stains and power tools. "Or what?" I asked, wiping my hands on a rag. "You'll sue me? With what grounds? I haven't done anything illegal." "I'll destroy you," he snarled. "I'll make sure every business in this town knows what kind of man you really are. You'll what exactly?" I stood up, and suddenly Brent didn't seem quite so confident. I might work with my hands for a living, but 20 years of manual labor had left me in pretty good shape. "You'll spread lies about me? Because I've got some truth about you that might be more interesting." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the screenshots, a particularly explicit photo he'd sent to my wife. Brent's face went white. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter how. What matters is what I do with it." I put the phone away. "See, here's the thing about truth, Brent. It's like grease under your fingernails. Once it's there, it's really hard to get rid of." He tried to grab for my phone, but I stepped back, and he stumbled, catching himself against a workbench. His perfect suit came away stained with motor oil. "Careful," I said. "Dry cleaning won't fix your reputation." Brent straightened his tie with shaking hands. "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not." After he left, Vic emerged from where he'd been pretending to work on a brake job. "Boss, that was beautiful. Did you see his face when he saw that picture?" "Just the beginning, Vic. Just the beginning." That night, I made copies of everything: USB drives, cloud storage, physical printouts. Then I started making phone calls. The first call was to the senior partners at Sienna's law firm. I didn't identify myself, just said I had some information they might find interesting about the conduct of their employees. I arranged to have packages delivered to their offices Monday morning. The second call was to Lila. She was so eager to get dirt on me that she didn't question why I was calling. "I know Sienna's been telling you I'm abusive," I said. "I just wanted you to know that I have security cameras throughout the house. If she's planning to make any false accusations, she should know that everything is documented." It was a bluff. I didn't have cameras, but Lila didn't know that. The third call was to a friend who worked at the local newspaper. Small-town papers love a good scandal, especially when it involves prominent citizens. By Monday morning, the dominoes were ready to fall. The law firm moved faster than I'd expected. By Tuesday afternoon, both Sienna and Brent had been suspended pending an internal investigation. The photos and text messages I'd provided were damning enough, but it was the video of their argument in the office elevator, captured by the building's own security system and leaked by a disgruntled employee, that really sealed the deal. Sienna was furious. She showed up at my garage Wednesday evening, her perfect composure finally cracking. "You bastard," she hissed, storming past Vic like he wasn't there. "You've destroyed everything I worked for." "No," I said calmly. not looking up from the invoice I was writing. "You destroyed it. I just made sure people could see the wreckage. Those photos were private. You had no right. They were on your phone, in my house, that I paid for." Now I looked at her. "You want to talk about rights? Let's talk about my right not to be cheated on, my right not to be lied about, my right not to be treated like garbage in my own marriage." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I can fix this," she said. "We can fix this. Just tell them you made it all up. Say you were jealous, that you doctored the photos. Please, Eli, I'll do anything." "You're right about one thing," I said. "You can fix this. Sign the divorce papers, disappear, start over somewhere else, but you're not dragging me down with you anymore." She left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. Desperate people do desperate things, and Sienna had always been dramatic when she didn't get her way. I was right to be worried. Thursday night, I was driving home from Murphy's bar when I noticed headlights following me. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. Same direction, after all. But when I turned left instead of right at the intersection, the car followed. When I made another unnecessary turn, it stayed behind me. I recognized the car when it pulled up next to me at a red light. Brent's BMW, with Brent behind the wheel looking like he'd been drinking. He rolled down his window and started yelling something I couldn't hear over my truck's engine. The light turned green. I drove normally, but Brent accelerated and swerved in front of me, forcing me to brake hard. Then he slowed down, matching my speed, boxing me in behind a slow-moving sedan. This was getting dangerous. I pulled out my phone and called Vic. "Where are you?" I asked when he answered. "Home, why?" "I need you to meet me at the industrial district. Bring the tow truck, and hurry." I knew those streets like the back of my hand. Every alley, every dead end, every shortcut. Brent didn't. He was too busy trying to intimidate me to realize I was leading him exactly where I wanted him to go. I turned onto Harbor Street, then into the maze of warehouses and loading docks that made up the old industrial section of town. Brent followed, his BMW's engine roaring as he tried to keep up with my truck's tighter turning radius. The chase ended in a narrow alley between two abandoned buildings. I pulled through and stopped, blocking the exit. Behind Brent, Vic's tow truck sealed off the entrance. Brent was trapped. He got out of his car, stumbling slightly, definitely drunk. "You think you're so smart," he slurred, pointing at me. "You think you've won, but I've got connections, I've got money, I'll bury you." "With what?" I asked. "Your law license? Oh wait, that's gone. Your reputation? Also gone. Your girlfriend? Well, technically she's still my wife, but I'm working on fixing that." He swung at me then, a wild, clumsy punch that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him into the brick wall of the warehouse. "Careful, Brent. You're already in enough trouble without adding assault to the list." Vic climbed down from his truck, grinning. "Should I call the cops, boss? Drunk driving, reckless endangerment, attempted assault? That's a pretty good list of charges." "Not yet," I said. "I think Mr. Calloway here is going to drive home very carefully and think about his life choices. Aren't you, Brent?" He nodded, holding his nose where it had connected with the brick. "Good. And Brent, if I see you following me again, if you come to my garage again, if you so much as look at me wrong, I'll make sure every lawyer in the state knows exactly what kind of man you are. Are we clear?" He nodded again and stumbled back to his car. We let him drive away, but Vic followed at a distance to make sure he made it home without killing anyone. When I got home, there was a message on my answering machine from Detective Janes of the local police. Sienna had filed a complaint, claiming I was stalking and harassing her. I called him back immediately. "Detective, this is Eli Porter. I understand my wife filed a complaint." "That's right. She says you've been following her, threatening her. Says she's afraid for her safety." "I see. Well, I think you should know that tonight her boyfriend tried to run me off the road. I've got dashcam footage if you're interested. Also witness statements from several people who saw him confront me at my place of business earlier this week." There was a pause. "Send me the footage. I'll take a look." "Will do. And detective? You might want to ask Mrs. Porter about the internal investigation at her law firm. Turns out there's a lot more to this story than she's telling you." By Friday morning, the complaint against me had been quietly dropped. Brent, on the other hand, was facing charges for reckless driving and public intoxication. The annual Coastal Legal Aid Charity Gala was the social event of the season, a chance for the city's legal community to pat themselves on the back while raising money for a good cause. Under normal circumstances, Sienna would have been one of the featured speakers. This year, she wasn't even supposed to be there. But desperate people do desperate things. I found out about her plan from Zach, who'd finally grown a conscience. She was going to crash the gala and make a public plea for sympathy, painting herself as the victim of an abusive husband who'd manipulated evidence to destroy her career. "She's got Lila helping her," Zach warned me. "They've been coaching her on what to say, how to cry on cue. She's even got fake bruises." "Fake bruises?" "Makeup. Professional job, too. She's going to claim you hit her, that you've been threatening her. Lila's going to film the whole thing and put it online." I thanked Zach and hung up. Then I called Margot. "How do you feel about getting dressed up for a fancy party?" I asked. An hour later, we were at the hotel, slipping in through the service entrance. Margot knew one of the catering staff, who was happy to let us borrow uniforms and blend in with the crowd of servers. The ballroom was packed with lawyers, judges, and city officials. Everyone who mattered in the local legal community was there, along with their spouses and the usual collection of social climbers and wannabes. I spotted Sienna near the bar, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. The fake bruises were subtle but visible, a yellowish mark on her wrist, a faint discoloration around her left eye. She was talking to a group of women, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Lila was nearby with her phone out, pretending to mingle while actually recording everything. "She's good," Margot whispered. "If I didn't know better, I'd believe her myself." "She's had a lot of practice," I replied. The speeches started around 8 o'clock. The usual parade of self-congratulation and humble bragging, interrupted by the occasional genuine moment of passion for the cause. I waited, knowing Sienna would make her move during the open microphone portion at the end. I was right. She walked to the podium with perfect timing, just as the evening was winding down and people were starting to think about leaving. The room quieted as she adjusted the microphone, her hands visibly shaking. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know I wasn't supposed to speak tonight, but I couldn't stay silent any longer." The crowd was riveted. This was better than any soap opera. Many of you know about the video that's been circulating, the one where my husband humiliated me at a party, blindsided me with divorce papers in front of our friends. She paused, letting a single tear roll down her cheek. "What you don't know is the rest of the story." She rolled up her sleeve, showing the fake bruise on her wrist. "This is what happens when I come home late from work. This is what happens when dinner isn't ready on time. This is what happens when I try to stand up for myself." The crowd gasped. Several people pulled out their phones to record. Lila was practically glowing with excitement. "I've been living in fear for months," Sienna continued, "too ashamed to tell anyone, too scared to leave. When I finally found the courage to ask for help, he destroyed my career, turned my friends against me, made me look like the villain in our story. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her myself. But I did know the truth, and I'd come prepared." I nodded to Margot, who slipped out of the ballroom. A moment later, the lights dimmed, and the room's projection screen flickered to life. The first image was a screenshot of one of Sienna's text messages to Brent. "Maybe I should push him to hit me. Would make the divorce easier." The crowd murmured in confusion. Sienna's face went white as she realized what was happening. The next image was a photo she'd sent to one of her other lovers, taken in our bedroom while I was at work. The timestamp showed it was sent the same day she'd claimed to have a book club meeting. Then came the audio. Recordings I'd made of her phone conversations, talking to her friends about how stupid I was, how easy I was to manipulate, how she couldn't wait to take me for everything in the divorce. "Turn it off!" Sienna screamed, but no one moved to help her. The crowd was transfixed by the evidence playing out before them. The final piece was security footage from her office building, Sienna and Brent in the elevator, hands all over each other, completely oblivious to the camera recording their every move. When the screen went dark, the silence in the room was deafening. Sienna stood at the podium, exposed and humiliated, her carefully crafted victim narrative destroyed by her own words and actions. Then the whispers started. Lawyers love a good cross-examination, and they'd just watched one of their own get completely destroyed by evidence she couldn't refute. I stepped out from behind the serving station where I'd been hiding and walked to the front of the room. The crowd parted before me like I was Moses at the Red Sea. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone from Sienna's nerveless fingers, "I think we can all agree that the truth is more important than a good story. My wife wanted to paint me as an abuser, but as you've just seen, the only thing I'm guilty of is being married to a liar." Sienna tried to speak, but no words came out. The fake bruises on her face looked ridiculous now, obvious makeup that fooled no one. "The divorce papers stand," I continued. "And after tonight, I think we all know why." I handed the microphone back and walked out of the ballroom, leaving Sienna standing alone at the podium while 300 of the city's most influential people stared at her in disgust and disbelief. It was over. She was finished. The aftermath of the gala was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, the video of Sienna's humiliation had gone viral, shared thousands of times across social media with hashtags like Jack Fake Bruises and Jack's Lawyer Liar. The local news picked up the story, and by Tuesday, it had made national headlines. Lawyers' fake abuse claims exposed at charity gala. Sienna's law firm, already conducting an internal investigation, expedited their process and terminated her employment. The State Bar Association opened their own investigation into her conduct. Brent, meanwhile, had quietly left town, his own career in ruins. But Sienna wasn't done fighting. Cornered and desperate, she made one final play. I learned about it from Mrs. Firth, who called me at the garage Wednesday afternoon. "Eli, dear," she said, her voice worried. "Your wife was here earlier with a moving truck. She took everything. Furniture, appliances, even the light fixtures. The house is completely empty." I drove home to find exactly what Mrs. Firth had described. Sienna had stripped the place bare, taking not just her belongings, but everything of value we'd accumulated during our marriage. The only things left were items too heavy to move easily, or things she considered beneath her notice. There was a note on the kitchen counter. "You want a divorce? Fine. But I'm taking what's mine. Try to stop me, and I'll claim you threatened me. The police will believe me over you." She was wrong about that. After the gala, her credibility was shot. But she was right about one thing. Legally, she was entitled to half of our marital assets. The furniture, the appliances, even my grandmother's china that had been in my family for generations. I called my lawyer, but he just confirmed what I already knew. Until the divorce was finalized, she had every right to take community property. "Where is she now?" I asked. "No one knows," he said. "She's not at her apartment, not at any of her friends' places. It's like she vanished." But people don't just vanish, especially people like Sienna who need attention like oxygen. I had a pretty good idea where she'd gone. The marina was quiet at night, just the sound of waves lapping against the docks and the occasional creak of a boat straining against its moorings. Brent's yacht was still there. He'd fled town so quickly he'd left it behind. I found them on the deck, sharing a bottle of wine and counting cash. Lots of cash. Well, well, I said, stepping out of the shadows. If it isn't Bonnie and Clyde. They spun around, startled. Sienna's face cycled through surprise, fear, and finally defiance. Eli, she said, standing up. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. This isn't your boat. It is now, Brent said, trying to sound confident. Sienna and I are partners. In everything. I looked at the cash spread out on the deck table. Let me guess. You sold everything you stole from the house, planning to sail off into the sunset together. It wasn't stealing, Sienna snapped. It was community property. I had every right. To my grandmother's china, to the tools my father left me, to the wedding ring that belonged to my mother. I shook my head. You always were greedy, Sienna, but this is low, even for you. What are you going to do about it? Brent challenged, standing up beside her. Call the police? We haven't broken any laws. Actually, you have. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Theft of a yacht, for starters. This boat belongs to the bank now. Brent defaulted on his loan when he lost his job. Taking it without permission is grand theft. Brent's face went pale. How did you know about your financial troubles? Please? You think I didn't do my research? You've been living on credit for months, hoping to make partner before it all came crashing down. When that didn't happen, you figured you'd run away with my wife and my money. I scrolled through my phone. I've also got photos of you two loading stolen property into a moving truck. Mrs. Firth is very handy with a camera phone for someone her age. Sienna lunged for my phone, but I stepped back and she stumbled, catching herself against the boat's railing. Give me that, she screamed. No, I said calmly. I think I'll keep it. Evidence, you know. In the distance, I could hear sirens, getting closer. You called the cops, Brent said, his voice flat. I called the harbor patrol, and the Coast Guard, and yes, the police. Amazing how quickly they respond when you report a stolen yacht with 2 fugitives on board. The first patrol boat appeared around the point, searchlights sweeping across the water. More sirens were converging on the marina from the land side. This is over, I said. Both of you. Your careers, your reputations, your freedom, all of it. Sienna was crying now, real tears this time. Eli, please, we can work this out. I'll give everything back. I'll sign the divorce papers. Just don't let them arrest me. You should have thought of that before you decided to steal from me. Before you decided to destroy my name. Before you decided to treat our marriage like a joke. The patrol boat pulled up to the dock, officers already climbing out. Behind them, police cars were arriving at the marina, their lights painting the night in red and blue. Eli Porter? One of the officers called out. That's me, I replied. We got your call about the stolen yacht. Are these the suspects? I looked at Sienna and Brent, huddled together on the deck like the criminals they'd become. Sienna was still beautiful, even crying and desperate. Brent still looked like he belonged in a boardroom, even with handcuffs in his immediate future. Yes, I said. That's them. As the officers boarded the yacht and began reading them their rights, Sienna looked at me one last time. I loved you, she said. Once I really did love you. No, I replied. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. They led her away in handcuffs, still crying, still beautiful, still completely unrepentant. Brent went quietly, already thinking about lawyers and bail and damage control. I watched until the police cars disappeared, taking them away to face the consequences of their choices. Then I walked back to my truck and drove home to my empty house. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Sienna pled guilty to theft charges and got 2 years probation plus restitution. Brent got 18 months in minimum security for the yacht theft and various financial crimes they uncovered during the investigation. I got my grandmother's china back, along with most of the other things she'd stolen. More importantly, I got my life back. 6 months later, I was having coffee with Margot at Murphy's bar when she asked the question I'd been expecting. Any regrets? I thought about it for a moment. About the marriage? Yeah. I regret wasting 8 years on someone who never deserved them. About the divorce? About the way it ended? I smiled and shook my head. I'm glad we finally agreed on something.